week's edition of Stewards Review. I'm Sarah Al-Badwi, joined here by our steward, Victor Escobar, as we are going to take a look back on a couple of decisions that were made earlier on this week. And we'll look at a horse who was ultimately declared a non-starter, a horse who was actually favored at post time. And that's looking back at Royal Bobby, who didn't seem to have a fair start. Victor, can you tell us what we're seeing here?
Thank you, Sarah. Yes, in the fifth race on January 10th, 2025, we hung the inquiry immediately after the race, looking at the start of number 5. Number 5 clearly was slow leaving the gate, and we wanted to see if his chances were compromised at the start. In the state of New York, the rules are very specific as to what we take into consideration when declaring a horse a non-starter, and I'd like to share the rule with the customers now. If we can pull it up, please. So per the New York Gaming Commission Rule 4009.21, every horse shall be considered a starter when the stall gates open on the signal of the starter, unless the stewards declare a horse or horses non-starters because in their opinion, the horse's chances were compromised leaving the starting gate. If so, all bets on non-starters will be refunded unless the horse wins. That's the only time that we wouldn't declare a horse a non-starter is if the horse overcame the compromise and ultimately won. In this case, this horse ultimately finished 5th, and we'll take a look at the incident again, and I can walk you through what has happened here. So the expectation that we have with our assistant starters is once the gates open, we want to clearly see all assistant starters' hands come up into the air so that way that we're confident that in no way was this horse held. And if we can look again at the incident, please. Here, Royal Bobby, the starting gates open, and you can see the offhand of the assistant starter was delayed coming off of the horse. Ultimately, we're not confident that the hand came up in an appropriate time, so as a result, we declared the horse a non-starter and refunded the wagers.
All right, so that is what happened in the case of Royal Bobby here, declared a non-starter in that race over this past weekend. And we'll take a look at another incident where both horses did receive a fair start, but ultimately there was some interference in the stretch. And that's taking a look back at Frizzante as well as Strapped in a race on the 11th of January. Victor, what did you see in the stretch of this race?
So at the conclusion of the 6th race here on January 11th, we had a stewards inquiry as well as a trainer's objection. Trainer of the 4 Strapped, Rudy Rodriguez, lodged an objection against the 1 Frizzante for alleged interference down here in the late stretch. As we look through this incident, we can clearly see the number 1 in the white sleeves and the blue cap. He is going to be drifting off his line under left-handed encouragement from jockey Kendrick Carmouche. Again, he's drifting off his line throughout the stretch run. Number 4 Strapped in the black sleeves, red cap. He's beginning his run at this point. He's clearly making a run on. He has to alter course, being intimidated by that inside horse drifting out, intimidating him off his intended running line for several strides. You can see his head hung out. The stewards ultimately felt that this intimidation did cost the horse the opportunity at a better placing, and in the New York Gaming Commission Rules 4035.2, it sets the parameters for what we look at when determining whether a horse should be disqualified or not. And ultimately, if in the judgment of the Board of Stewards, as long as we're satisfied, if we had interference that was a cause of whether it interfered, impeded, or intimidated another horse or caused a jostle, then if we're satisfied that the interference cost the horse the opportunity at better placing, we're justified in the disqualification. Given the final margin of victory here was less than a nose and that horse was intimidated off his running line, we ultimately made the decision to disqualify the horse from 1st to 2nd and made the result 4-1, 7-2.
And Strapped put up as your official victor in that race, of course impacting the pick 6, but there were plenty of other prices within that sequence as well, and it seemed as though it was a continued situation throughout the stretch rather than one infraction. So ultimately the decision made for Strapped to be put up over Frizzante. Victor, thank you so much for taking the time to walk us through these decisions, and you can check out all of the updates on our store decisions over at NYRA.com.
Thank you, Sarah.